CardGamesTV1 Podcast. Cheaper is better, or cheaper cards is better. I've been seeing a lot of times to the big guys, and gals in the community, trying to share the idea that the only way you could be good at the game is if you spend a lot of money, which is not true. You can do really good in the game with very little money. And logically, it makes more sense to spend less money. And this is part of where being good at the game comes in handy, right? The better you are at the game, the less money you'll spend on the game, because you will only use certain cards, you'll rely on certain cards because they work, right? They give you the results you need. And you can play almost anything and get the results you want. So you can play the cheapest deck, whether it's an archetype or not, or a generic deck. You can play the cheapest stuff and still do good, right? Still top events. Proof of that is, obviously out there in tournaments, you do see a lot of decks that are budget friendly, right? Our budget decks, topping events. But the thing about a lot of the expensive decks, topping, we all know the real reason they top is not because they're the best, cards or the best deck or anything like that. No, it's because they're overrepresented. That's something I've always noticed in other card games, especially in Yu-Gi-Oh. That was a thing for a long time. The idea that the only reason decks actually top, other than the side deck, that's for a different conversation, but other than the side deck, the real reason a deck tops an event is because of over representation. And it was nice to see over time. It took a long time for this to be a common concept or even a term, over representation. Not a lot of people say that. Not a lot of people think that. Everybody always just thinks, the best decks top events. Clearly, that's how that works. The best players top events. That's how it works. It's like, well, I want to agree with the whole best player concept. It's like, that is true. Typically, the best players tend to top events, but there's to be said about other scenarios. A lot of times, the so-called best players at top events aren't actually the best players. They're just the best at getting away with doing things they shouldn't be doing, things that are against the rules, as they say. So that's for another conversation. But ultimately, two things I've seen time and time again from different card games, especially Yu-Gi-Oh, was the idea of the reason why, realistically a deck tops an event is usually because of, one, over-representation, too many people playing the deck, so of course somebody's going to top and win the event with that deck, especially if everybody's playing the same exact build. Clearly, somebody's going to top, because you're going to have a lot of mirror matches. You're going to have a lot of decks that, either couldn't beat the deck because either A, the player, or B, the deck that the person was playing was not optimal for being able to, be played. Usually, if the deck's not optimal, that always goes back to the player. If your deck's not optimal, it's your fault, right? Because it'd just be weird for you to go to a tournament and deliberately take, the weakest version of a deck you could possibly take. You have all these good decks, but you take like your weakest deck. That would be weird to do that. That would make no sense. You're going to a tournament, you want to take your best. So if your deck is not up to par, right? It's not, optimized to get you the results that you typically would get if you were just playing for fun or whatnot, then there's a problem. And it starts from you, deciding, choosing that deck that is not the best option for you as a player, not necessarily for the meta or, format or whatnot, or the game in general, just the best for you. Because decks by themselves don't do shit. The players are the most important things when it comes to card games, right? And over time, I noticed that stopped being important. More people are more focused on decks, which is why net decking's a thing, right? Ain't nobody trying to copy the playstyle of another player. They copy the decks thinking that by default brings the other player's playstyle with it, but it actually doesn't. You copy, you copy the deck. It's like a toolbox, right? Just because let's say that somebody's really good at anything in general. Like let's say in somebody's art box, right? They got painting equipment in there and stuff, and they're really good at painting. You can't take their paint their art box or make your own exact copy of the art box and think you're the same as them, like, right? Like, let's say Picasso had a specific box full of specific painting equipment to paint stuff. Just because you copied what was in his box and put it in your box doesn't make you a Picasso, right? It's the same thing as you wearing Michael Jordan's uniform does not make you Michael Jordan, right? You don't get you don't become that which you're copying, right? Because you're not a perfect copy. You're not the same. So that idea of copying something is stupid. So that's why it's important to actually be good at the game. So good, right? Not good. I keep saying good a lot. What I really mean is great. Because it's funny, when I say good, people, when I say, oh, I'm good at the game, people assume I'm saying that I'm great, I'm unbeatable, I'm unstoppable, right? I'm God tier. No, I'm saying I'm good. Like, I'm good. I'm good at the game. I understand the game, at the core concept of how the game functions. And, I do really well. But, the thing is that you want to always improve. Everybody's good. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's like everybody's good, right? As in, unless you're bad, right? Then there's the opposite, right? The opposite is you're bad at the game. But when you're good, right? And anybody can be good with anything. But to be great, to be better, that's where you have to put in the effort. And that's why, the idea of thinking that the best deck, is expensive, or the best deck, is a deck that belongs to someone else that you copied, and now you think you have, the best chances of winning because you have the best deck, but in reality, you don't have the best chance of winning. Unless the deck is like some type of they always call like helmet decks or autopilot decks, decks where it's like, you don't have to be good, right? I mean, you don't have to be great, is what I meant to say. You don't have to be great in order to do good in the game, right? You just have to be good enough, right? You have to be competent, that's what I'm trying to really get at. Competent enough to be able to play the deck, good enough that it does what it's designed to do. Like Janimba Mill, for example, doesn't take a genius, to win with Janimba Mill, right? The whole idea is just keep milling your opponent, negate all your opponent's attempts at attacking you, and mill them out, right? So, that's a really simple thing. But this game is simple, so it's not that complicated, which is why the idea of thinking you have to spend a lot of money to play the game, is ridiculous. One of the selling points, which was ironic about the game when it first came out, because it was being compared to other card games at the time, especially Yu-Gi-Oh, was the fact that it was cheaper. So people who played Yu-Gi-Oh left Yu-Gi-Oh to play this game because it was cheaper. Their complaints about, Yu-Gi-Oh's too expensive to play. But the reason why is Yu-Gi-Oh, quote unquote, too expensive to play is because you're net decking. It's because you're playing specific strategies, right? Or rephrase that. You're playing specific cards that are expensive, and you don't even need them like that. There are cheaper alternatives. The problem is most people don't go for alternatives. No one's think about cereal. There's name brand cereals, and then there's the off brand, right? There's the bootleg cereal. Bootleg cereals is just as good as name brand cereals, as in, they're not good for your health either way, right? Typically, they're full of sugar and all that stuff, and artificial flavoring and other chemicals. So they're actually not good for you regardless if they're name brand or not. But the name brand costs more than the non-name brand, right? But it's the irony that people will lean towards the name brand ones more than the non-name brands, even though it's roughly the same thing. So that's what I'm saying is like, cheaper as in always look for the cheaper option, right? Think about it. Most people try to play certain battle cards that have low cost, like it costs less to play them. They could be a 5-drop, but you can play them for 1 energy if you use a super comp or something, right? Like an arrival play is what I'm trying to say. So even though the card costs 5 to play, you play it for 1, right? So if you're okay doing that and you like doing that, why don't you like the idea of playing cheaper cards that cost less to obtain and to have and to use, and as opposed to buying the more expensive stuff, right? Like, can you play a blue deck without Baby Hatchet? Yes, of course. The fact that I don't own a Baby Hatchet, except for the proxy, I don't own an actual real one. Yeah, I play blue without it, just fine. Would I like to have a Baby Hatchet? Would it be nice to have it? Because it has it could be useful. Yeah, but it's 1 out of a 50 card deck, right? So the likelihood of me drawing it and using it is slim, very slim. So, monetarily, it's not really worth paying a lot for something that I will rarely get to use. That'll be very rare for me to actually see it in my matches, because I would love to see it in every match, right? Logically. But that's not guaranteed. Now, if they create, because I had the idea of searchers, if they created cards that you play, you meet a condition, and you can add your ultimate to your hand from your deck or life, then that would be, then that would make it easier to play the cards. So then, yes, it would be worth, spending a lot of money to get the ultimate, right? The STR, as a lot of people like to call it, because of the fact that you're guaranteed to be able to play it in every match. So, for example, Cell Zeno, if your deck revolves around, setting your opponent up to drop that, Cell Zeno and go for game, then being able to search it out and get the Cell Zeno in order to pull that off makes it, worth, however much it costs to play, to get the card, right? So it makes it worth it when you can use them more often than not. So that's why it's like, the fact that it's hard to get the ultimate whenever you want it, it's not a good idea to really be using one. You're better off just using a cheap one-off. So I made a video where it was about budget options for ultimates. So if you want that nice little strong one-of, card that whenever you do draw it and you can play it, it can give you, a huge advantage because it has like a really powerful effect. There's tons of battle cards in this game you could use in that slot, in the ultimate slot. So that's why I made the whole budget ultimate alternatives video. And there's some people who liked it and they tried it and they liked, the results. They liked it, they liked that it was an option. And that's the main point I'm trying to get, is like, if you want to spend a lot of money and buy the most expensive cards in the game, fine, you do you. That's your money, right? But logically, there are cheaper options, and most people don't even consider cheaper options. Some people don't even consider cheaper options, even if it would increase their overall win rate. Like, for example, if you have a card that destroys all your opponent's battle cards, right? That's expensive, but there's a cheaper alternative that does almost the same thing. Maybe the cost to play the card is one energy higher than the other card. So let's say the card that I'm thinking of is like, let's say a card I'm thinking of is a 3-drop board wipe versus a 4-drop board wipe. But the 3-drop board wipe is more expensive than the 4-drop board wipe when it comes to actually, buying the cards. But let's say you can afford the 3-drop board wipe. But the 4-drop board wipe is also, is cheap, so why not pick it up, right? Pick it up so that we can have both. Right? It's better to have both. They're both equally as good. right? Especially if they're very similar in effect. And having 8 battle cards in your deck that can board wipe, as opposed to only having 4, gives you 8 out of 50 card chance, right? 8 out of 50 chance of board wiping your opponent in every game. Mathematically, the ratio, right? The term ratio, right? You increase your chances of doing that, as opposed to, be like, oh no, I'm only gonna play, the quote unquote best cards in the game. That's why it was cool to see when some people were like, oh yeah, man, it's hard to get the draw ape. A lot of people like to call it draw ape, the Goku instinct. You pay 2 warp, send it from your warp to your drop to the warp and draw 2 cards. Some people found some alternative ones. Some people found some negate that they can warp to draw a card. They found a battle card you can it was a boo, that you can warp and draw. So some people found some alternatives that ain't exactly as good as the draw ape, but it's good enough that it was able to give them whatever they needed. I think it was meant to be used to help them combat hand control, or just in general, it was just good for deck thinning, because these are cards you could play and then use them to draw and dig deeper into your deck to get to your good cards, right? So there's some logic to that, right? Some good game theory. So I agree with that. So it was good. It's like, yeah, good to substitute. But the cool thing is, if you have the draw apes and you have those substitutes, that's even more digging into your deck, right? So just keep those in mind. I'm just saying, keep your options, or look for more options, and expand your pool, right? Your pool of options, right? You always want more options, especially as a card game player. You want infinite options, right? You want many different ways that you can win a game, right? Many different ways you can do the same thing. That way you're not limited to what you could do when you play. But a lot of times I see that, people keep promoting certain cards and be like, oh, you gotta play this, you gotta play that, you gotta play this exact way because of the meta this, the meta that. And those cards that they keep promoting are not cheap. They tend to be very expensive. And then by them promoting it, it makes them even more expensive, right? So the prices go high when people start be like, yeah, this card is good, let's get this, that, and third. That's why, like in Yu-Gi-Oh, buyouts tend to happen, because somebody be like, oh, you know what, this card is really good because you can use it for this reason. And then everybody's like, oh, damn, I want that. And then bang, buyouts start happening. People start buying up the card because of that usefulness. And then they overprice it. It's like, well, if people want it because it's useful, you gotta pay us big bucks for it. And that's unfortunate. But if people were already ahead of the game, right, already was thinking that certain cards are useful, and they kept those cards, especially your bulk. If you buy a whole bunch of booster boxes and you have a whole bunch of non-foils, right, non-expensive cards, right, you have a bunch of commons. If you kept, most of them that has potential, then whenever there's a scenario where those cards are useful, you already have them for cheap, because you already have them, right? You don't want to wait until the cards become useful, and then now it's like, damn, they're useful now, and I really need it for my deck, and they're $20 a pop or some ridiculous shit. It's like, well, that's what happens when you didn't hold on to, good cards, right? Cards that have potential. Every set, you're supposed to look for cards that have potential, first and foremost. Obviously, you're going to see the good cards, right? The cards that are like, oh my god, this card's amazing, look what it does. Yes, duh. Now, after you're done, drooling over the shiny cards, look at the cards that aren't shiny. Look at the commons. Look at the low rarity cards, and look for potential. Look for cards that could be good in the near future, or at least halfway decent, that has some potential being played, and then hold on to them, right? That's what I do every time I look at a set. I'm looking for potential. I'm obviously looking for really good cards to help me replace cards that I already have. I'm always looking for the better cards, right? The good cards. But then I also look for cards that have potential. Cards that, are good, but most people don't immediately think they're good. For example, I forgot what it's called. Was it damage absorption or something like that? It's a green negate. It's like it negates an attack, and then for the rest of the turn, you don't take damage from skills. That has potential. That could be really good in preventing your opponent from winning the game off of like catastrophic blow or something similar to that. So that obviously will have potential against Invoker, because Invoker has catastrophic blow, and any other deck that has a burn effect, Yamcha, maybe Bomo burn, and the list goes on, right? So you might want to consider holding on to a playset of that negate. It's a common. It's cheap. Shouldn't be that hard to get a copy and hold on to it. But you definitely don't want to wait until it is popular, it is useful, and then be like, oh damn, they're like $5 a pop now. Like Senzu used to be cheap at one point, like in the beginning of the game. Could get a playset of Senzu beans for $1 until people realized how good it was, and then bang, it just immediately shot up to like $5 a pop. So then a $20 playset for Senzu bean. Topo, he had the same similar scenario. He was cheap. I got my playset of Topos for $8, and if I'm right, literally like 2 days after, it was not 2 days. It was a week after. That's what it was, a week, because it took a week for me to get my cards. So I ordered it, and then a week after I ordered it, suddenly, it turned into a $20 card. I'm like, yo, no, I paid $2 a copy, so it was 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, it was $8. I paid $8 for a playset, like $2 per copy, and then they turned into $20 copies. They're like, damn, I got an $80 playset, but it only cost me $8. So there's people out there who paid 10 times more than I did, because I saw the potential in the card ahead of time, before the buyouts and the ridiculousness of it being overpriced. And I was tempted to sell it, but it's like, no, it's a really good card though. There's a reason I bought it, because it was really good and had a lot of potential, obviously, right? And the rest is history. But that's the whole point of like showing cheap cards respect while they're still cheap, because they could always become expensive at any moment. Same thing goes for ultimates. Like shit, a lot of ultimates dropped drastically. So that's why I'm like, yeah, even though I'm saying don't buy the expensive cards. Yeah, I'm saying don't buy the expensive cards when they're expensive. Get them when they're cheap, right? Get the reprints. Enjoy being able to get good cards for less. But logically, a lot of the best cards tend to be the stuff that was cheap in the first place. Stuff that was, that you had easy access. So. Have a great night. So, that's all I was saying. Is to keep your eyes open to potential, right? Potential is very important, because the whole thing about potential is that it usually leads to greatness. Just like being a player, right? The potential. When I started this game, started playing this game, and started seeing, how it functions, and seeing, that it, I still believe that it has flaws, obviously, in the mechanics, and the rules of the game, but that's because of my experience from playing other card games, where I'm like, yeah, in other card games, we don't do things this way, we don't do things that way. But that was the whole point. They're trying to be different for the sake of being different. So they want to do things differently. So it was just a matter of getting used to the difference, right? Getting used to how different certain aspects of this game is compared to other games. But despite some of the differences, there's a lot about this game that's the same as other card games. So it makes it that much easier for me to implement my experience from other card games and transfer it over to this one. The next game I'm getting into is One Piece. So of course I'll be bringing over to that community, over to that game, my particular set of skills. just like I did for Digimon. Haven't done anything for Digimon in a long time, but it's, because there's not much really to do. The game is relatively simple, straightforward. So, best way to put it is that I try to solve, right? Try to understand the mystery of a certain card game and then solve the game, right? Solve what makes the game good. Solve what makes the game, easy to play and win, right? Because the goal is to be good at it, right? You want to master the game. And that's the thing, mastering it, which is solving it. And I've solved many, many games, right? I've created a lot of OTKs and FTKs and other card games. I created, strategies like, multiple negates, break my board type stuff in Yu-Gi-Oh! I've created, the triangle power concept, tons of things. I even wrote 3 books about Yu-Gi-Oh! That's how much knowledge I have on the game that I was able to write books about it. I'm still, thinking about writing books for other card games like Magic, Dragon Ball Super, and whatnot. We'll see. I'm pretty busy doing a lot of other things. But I do have videos. I got a Dragon Ball Super Masterclass, right? I got videos on my channel, YouTube channel, CardGamesTV1, where you can, learn the lessons, right? Learn the stuff that I'm trying to teach, the stuff that I've mastered. And whenever, I learn, or I should say master, when I master a certain aspect of the game, then I share it. Like the idea of, not comboing, right? The whole no combo strategy, where you're trying to get to the point where you don't need to combo as much or even at all. There are different things you can do, and there's a way you could play where you don't need to combo as much, because you actually want your opponent to combo more than you. That gives you an advantage and puts them at a disadvantage, because they're giving up cards to try to stop your attacks, and you're not giving up anything to try to deal them damage, to try to win the game. So that puts you in an advantage position, right? It puts you in a position of power in that scenario. So you have the advantage. Not trying to get into game theory, but you get the idea. It's like you want to find good cards that are cheap, that you can get your hands on, that are generic enough that you can use them multiple times with different decks. Whenever a new set comes out, you can always reuse those cards, because you don't want to build a deck and then it's only good for one format, and then new set drops and then suddenly you want to get rid of that old deck. I mean, you do whatever you want, but I'm just saying that it's better to not give up an old deck just because some new stuff came out. You always want to improve upon what you have, because best way to put it is like you yourself as a human being, right? It's better for you to improve yourself than to be like, nah, I want to be like someone else. I want to be like Michael Jordan, or I want to be like Denzel, or I want to be like, Superman or something. Like, I want to be something else. I want to change myself completely. I want to replace myself with something else. Instead of improving yourself and being either A, better than Michael Jordan, being stronger and better, faster than Superman, right? Be a super you, a superwoman, a super whatever, right? Instead of you becoming a better version of yourself, or a better version of something else, you instead want to be that something else. And that's one of the problems we see in society. And I definitely see that in card games, where people, too busy trying to do the new thing, right? Oh, a new set drops. Let me drop everything that I was working on. Let me stop testing out these decks that I'm, trying to perfect, try and get them to be like really, really consistent, really good, and just jump on to the next trend, right? That's the thing. A lot of people are followers, not leaders. Instead of being good at something, they rather just do something else, right? They rather just do what they think is good. Oh, this new deck is good. Let me play that. Or, everybody is playing these cards, so I should do the same. You know, oh, this person won the tournament, so I'm gonna copy their deck, because that, in my mind, makes me think that, you know, I won the tournament, when it doesn't. And there's people that definitely do that. The whole idea of thinking that if they copy off of somebody else, if they have the same exact deck as somebody else, then that person's victory is their victory. That gives them credibility. It's like, well, hey, I'm playing the same deck as the person who won, you know, the world championship, blah blah blah. Therefore, I'm clearly a good player because I have the same deck as that person. But it's like, but you don't have the same achievement as that person. You didn't play that deck at the event and won. That person did. All you're doing is copying off of them, and then thinking that you deserve the same accolade, the same credit, the same respect as that person. Think about how stupid that is, right? It's like, you know, there's so many examples of that type of delusion, right? That type of stupidity of thinking that if somebody else does something, you know, that counts for you too. And it's like, no, it doesn't. It counts for them. That's their achievement, not yours. You got to achieve your own shit. Yes. Can you take the same deck, same exact build as somebody else and go do good in that event? Yes, you could. But again, it's you could, not that you definitely will, or you already have, just because you have the same deck as the person who topped the event. No, you could do it. That's the point. You could do it. So until you do it, it don't mean shit, right? Because what's also ironic is that there's a lot of people that'll be like, you know, like when it comes to me, they'll try to say the same thing. It's like, well, since I didn't top a tournament, why should they listen to me when it comes to the game at all? If I don't top, how do they know I'm good at the game? Even though I have gameplays, videos showing me playing the game, proving that my decks do what they're designed to do, right? And that I use them to do what I designed them to do. No, I gotta win tournaments in order for me to be acknowledged as being good. And notice I'm saying good, not great or perfect or God tier or pro or whatever other, you know, fancy term you want to use. No, just good, just generically good, just good enough, right? Think about how weird that is. To top an event just for people to be like, all right, you good, you know how to play the game. Like, what? It was obvious that I knew how to play the game. The game ain't that complicated. It's simple to learn and play the game and understand the game. But I gotta top an event for you to respect me as just a player. Like, what? That makes no sense. But that is the weird stuff you see in society. You know, some people think that, like, for example, if I'm really smart, right, and I'm really good at science, right, good at chemistry or something, right? Even though I'm really good at chemistry, right, and I can do some really cool stuff with chemicals, unless I have a degree, or unless large majority of the world says I am a chemical engineer or chemist or whatnot, right, acknowledge me as such, I'm not a chemist, according to some people's belief. Some people believe that unless I have like a college degree in chemical engineering, I'm not a chemist, so I can't, so no one should listen to me, right? That kind of stupid stuff. I've seen that online where some people be like, well, you're not a doctor, so why should I listen to you? And it's like, well, the information I'm giving you has been proven scientifically and has been proven by actual doctors to be true. So all I'm doing is sharing with you that information, the fact that it has already been proven to be true. So here's the information. What you do with it is up to you. But to try to discredit what I'm saying, right? To try to say what I'm saying is wrong just because I'm not a doctor, or just because you don't see me as one, that's ignorant. But Not surprising. There's a lot of ignorant people out there. But anyway, this is not about the problems of the world. Obviously, this is about, cheaper is better more often than not. So be open-minded is all I'm saying. Being open-minded. Want more people to experiment and try different things and share the spice. I notice I don't see that as much, especially in Dragon Ball Super. I don't see it as much as I see it like Yu-Gi-Oh per se. A lot of people tend to, pride themselves on sharing their spice. I can understand to a certain degree. You don't want everybody to know your secret sauce, right? Your secret weapon, your spice, as they say, right? Because you want to keep it, for when you go to an event. I can understand that, keeping your best kept secrets. I get it. I'm not against that. I'm not saying that that's wrong. What I'm saying is, most people tend to not give up. Like, somebody will have 3 different pieces of spice, right? 3 different things that they could put into a specific deck to make it like really, really, really nice, right? Really spicy, right? They choose one, and that's the one they're going to go to a tournament with, but they don't share the other 2, And I know why. Because they don't want no one else to, use the information. Because if they use this spice and the spice does good, and the spice works well, then that gives you competition. And most people don't want competition. I can understand, as a strategy, I understand you don't want people to get better. You want to get better than everybody, right? You want to have that spice, that nice spice deck, right? That nice advantage, just because you're doing something that no one else is doing, and you don't want no one else to be at your level. So you want to keep everybody, at a lower level than you, so that way you have a higher chance of winning. I get it. Strategically, I understand the logic behind that. Hey, to each their own, right? Just for me, that it just makes the game boring if I keep all my best, my best secrets to myself, right? If I keep everything to myself. Because one of the things from my personal experience is that just because what my deck can do or does do, does not mean you're going to stop me. You could try. Oh man, you could try. And that'd be fun, and that'd make the game better, more exciting, and worthwhile, and worth my time if you try to stop me. But you might not. Muhaha. And that's the end of the podcast.